All right, boys, what's going on? We're here again with Premier League Match Week predictions for Match Week 13. We'll do a little recap on Match Week 12, and honestly, Match Week 12 wasn't the worst. As I record this video, West Ham is leading Newcastle 1-0. I had Newcastle winning that one 3-1, so unless there's a crazy second half, I'm going to go ahead and chalk that one as a... Well, I'm going to chalk that one as an L on the correct score, most likely, but, you know, maybe Newcastle can come back and win the match still, so we'll see if I can get the 1x2 right. As for the rest of the recap for Match Week 12, we had Ipswich and Manchester United spot on. I predicted 1-1. It ends 1-1. I felt really good about that one. Southampton and Liverpool. I had 3-0 Liverpool predicted. It ends 2-3 to Liverpool. I think, if anything, I would have predicted maybe, I think looking back at it, I may have been able to predict 3-1 Southampton, giving Southampton a goal at home. Maybe would have been a little bit more respectful to them, but I really just was not feeling them to score, but we'll take the 1x2 part there, right? Manchester City and Tottenham, easily the worst prediction for me of the slate. Aston Villa versus Crystal Palace is one of those ones where I predicted 1-1, it ends 2-2, but in my head, I just feel really, really good about predicting the draw when Aston Villa was 1.6 on the money line, so I feel really good about that anyways. Bournemouth and Brighton, I had 2-1 to Bournemouth. Brighton end up winning 2-1. Just wrong. I mean, the idea was there of the 3 goals, 2-1 score line, just got it wrong. I thought the home team would be better in that matchup. Everton and Brentford, it's one of these things with Everton where if you go back and just kind of do the research on all my predictions, Everton has been one of the most back and forth teams. I either get their correct score completely right or I get the result completely wrong. This is one of those times where they do the 0-0 dance again. I just know if I predict a 0-0 on Everton, they're going to end up scoring like 3 goals. But in any case, I predicted 2-1 to Brentford. It ends 0-0. So we have Fulham and Wolves. I predicted 2-0 to Fulham. Wolves end up winning 4-1. All I got to say is Mateus Cunha is one of the most underrated players in the Prem. Leicester versus Chelsea, I predicted 1-0 to Chelsea, and I really used the 7:30 early kickoff as my reasoning behind it, but I mean, it ends 2-1 Chelsea. I still feel good about the 1-0 prediction either way. So we finished with 5 1x2 predictions correct, and we got 1 correct score, and that doesn't include the West Ham Newcastle game, but for all intents and purposes, 3-1 seems pretty unlikely at this point. So, but we'll see what happens, right? All right, boys, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let's get to the Match Week 13 predictions. All right, we have Brighton and Southampton. We have Brighton at 1.42 on the money line. Southampton's at 7, and the draw is at 4.5. The total in this match sits at about 3.5. That's kind of high. 3.5 is pretty high for a match like this. Both teams to score sitting at 1.62. I mean, first thing right away, seeing the total at 3.5, BTTS at 1.62, we're kind of envisioning maybe a 2-1, 3-1, 3-0, depending on what you think of Southampton. We do look at Southampton's recent matches, and we see that they have scored 2 goals on Liverpool. They didn't score at all against Wolves. They scored 1 on Everton, and then they did not score against Man City. So a little bit back and forth, a little bit inconsistency. It's kind of hard to decide what you want to think about Southampton in that aspect. And I feel like Brighton at home, we see them winning against Man City 2-1. They kept it close versus Liverpool, drew Wolves, barely edged out Tottenham, and drew Nottingham Forest. All things considered, for these last 5 results, Brighton has been in pretty good form overall, I would say. Southampton away are still trying to get on track here. They have not gotten a win in their last 4 Premier League matches. For this match, Brighton and Southampton, I'm going to go with a 2-1 Brighton win. Brentford and Leicester. We have Brentford at 1.65 on the money line. Leicester is at 4.5 with the draw at 4.2. The total in this match sits right on 3. 3 is about 1.95 odd, and the both team to score market again is 1.62. Recent results here kind of just show us Leicester have been in pretty bad form, and Brentford, pretty decent form overall. I was a bit disappointed in their 0-0 draw versus Everton. Leicester away from home have only gotten 1 win, and that was against Southampton. And when they have played each other, we've seen a 1-1 draw, a 2-2 draw, and a 2-1 Leicester win. So I'm not going to say it matters, but in the last 5 matches, Brentford have not even gotten 1 win, and they've only gotten, what is that, 2 draws in general. So for this match, I'm going to go with a Brentford 2-0 win over Leicester. Crystal Palace versus Newcastle. Crystal Palace is 2.75 on the 1x2, with Newcastle being 2.3 and the draw at 3.75. The total sits right at about 2.5, 2.75, depending on what book you're on. I'm going to assume it's going to close at around, I would assume it's going to close around 2.5. Both teams to score sitting at about 1.67. So that's 3 straight games now that we see both teams to score market is right around that 1.6, 1.7 number. Crystal Palace at home. I don't even want to look at this, to be honest with you. Like, I just know they're back and forth. I know there's nothing in Crystal Palace's recent form that just helps you make a prediction on their matches. Same thing with Newcastle. I think, like, you just look at this: win, loss, draw, loss, win, and they're losing against West Ham as I speak right now. I feel like both these teams, you can look at the recent results, you can try to project project how they're going to play, but if there's one thing that we do know in the Prem so far, Crystal Palace and Newcastle, very inconsistent teams. And I know some teams just feel that they're very inconsistent, but these two specifically, I feel like there's times where I just cannot figure out like what we're expecting from them in each match here. So we see Crystal Palace, the last time they played at home, they won 2-0. Newcastle won their last home match against them 4-0. And then the last match before that, Crystal Palace was 0-0. So 3 matches, 2 Crystal Palace home matches, 2 Crystal Palace results, and 1 Newcastle win. The hardest thing for me is to predict if I'm going to go with a like just a low scoring game, because my thing is if it's a high scoring game, I don't know if Crystal Palace can get a result in a high scoring match. I feel like if Crystal Palace is going to get a result, they're going to get a 1-0 result, a 1-1 result, or something like that. For this match, Crystal Palace and Newcastle, I'm going to go with a 1-0 Crystal Palace win. Nottingham Forest and Ipswich. We see Nottingham Forest at 1.63 on the 1x2 with Ipswich at 4.75 and the draw at 3.9. The over-under in this match sits right at about 2.5, 2.75. Both teams' score sits at 1.87, which is what I was saying basically. It seems probably difficult for Ipswich to get a goal in Forest here. We do see their last 2 matches have 3 and 4 goals in them, but other than that, they've had 1 goal, and 2 goals total. Ipswich away from home, outside of that Tottenham crazy upset. We've had a 4-3 game against Brentford, a 4-1 game against West Ham, a 1-1 draw against Southampton, and a 0-0 draw against Brighton. So a couple of interesting things here that we see. 4 out of 5 of these matches had both teams a score, right? 4 or 5 of these matches had both teams a score, and then one of them was just a simple 0-0 draw. So I think I'm going to go with a Nottingham win. I guess in my head right now, I'm just trying to debate, do I give Ipswich that goal or do I just kind of leave them alone? They were able to score on United. They were able to get the draw against United at home, but now they're playing away from home, and it could be a little more difficult for them. For Nottingham Forest and Ipswich, I'm going to go with a 2-0 Nottingham win. Wolves versus Bournemouth. So we see Wolves at 2.63, Bournemouth at 2.35, and the draw at 3.75. Right away, the first thing I can think about is, do I want to disrespect Wolves at home? Like the way the Premier League is funny, right? You just saw Wolves destroy Fulham away from home. Now they're at home against Bournemouth, and now it's like, oh, Bournemouth are favorites. Like here we go again. All right, over under for this match sits at about 3 on the dot there. Both teams scores at 1.53, so they are much expecting both of them to score in this match. Wolves at home have just been, I don't want to say bad because the losses are against Newcastle, Liverpool, and Man City. Like, that's not the worst. They drew Crystal Palace, which, depending on how you feel about that, could be really bad or just okay. Then they beat Southampton 2-0, which I think is the expected result there. Bournemouth away from home, they really just haven't figured it out in a few matches here. They lost to Liverpool, not the worst. They lost to Leicester, which is pretty bad, I'd say. Drew Aston Villa. I don't know what's going on with Aston Villa, really. And then you have the 3-2 loss to Brentford, which is crazy. And then overall, the thing that sticks out to me right away is in the last 3 matches, all 3 of the away teams have gotten not just the result, but the win. I feel like there's so many different directions I could take this in. Do I want to just back the Wolves form? I mentioned Mateus Cunha before I even, got into the predictions and everything, and do I really want to go against him? Bournemouth still can play pretty well. I feel like this might be one of those matches here where you see Wolves are 2.63 after a big win. Bournemouth are 2.35 after a pretty bad loss at home. So I feel like in this match, you could really be leaning towards, the Wolves result or the Wolves win. But I think I'm going to try to go against the grain. I'm going to try to go against the casual logic of this team won last week, this team lost last week. Let's just, go in the same direction again. So for this match, I'm going to go with a 2-1 Bournemouth win. West Ham versus Arsenal. We see Arsenal at 1.47 on the 1x2 with West Ham at 6. As I still record this video, West Ham are up 2-0 late in the match against Newcastle. So I'm just going to keep that in mind a little bit. Kind of goes to my other point of like West Ham, Newcastle, extremely unpredictable teams right now this year, especially with West Ham's away form, but we'll get into that. The total for this match sits at 3. The both teams' score sits at 1.8, which is quite high if you think about West Ham at home instead of Arsenal being at home, right? So they are putting a lot of respect on Arsenal's defense, which is warranted. It's fair play. 1.8 does sound right. I think if it was in Arsenal, this might even be like 2 for both teams to score. I'm kind of going back and forth in my head on whether I want to give West Ham the result here or not. I know it sounds pretty crazy with how the Premier League has been going lately. Like, upsets have just been happening, right? Some very good teams have been falling to, just lesser teams in general. But I think for this match, I'm not going in that direction. I'm going to go with an Arsenal 2-1 win over West Ham. Chelsea and Aston Villa. We have Chelsea here at 1.75. We have Villa at 4 and the draw at 4.1. So the total for this match sits at about 3.25 or 3.5, depending on what book you have. Both teams' score is very low, maybe the lowest of the entire match week at 1.5. Chelsea at home have not suffered a loss since Manchester City in match week 1. Villa away from home have been struggling. They've lost to Tottenham 4-1. They've lost to Liverpool 2-0. They even lost their Champions League match to Club Brugge, which is, I mean, that was not a great result by any means. They did not look good at all in that match. In the recent head-to-head matches, we have a 2-2 draw, and then we have a 1-0 Villa win and a 2-0 Villa win. But I think that Chelsea team is a lot different, and I mean, we have a completely different manager now, so I don't know if I want to go too much into those recent results. As much as I know that Chelsea's good, as good as they've looked recently too, I actually do think I'm going to go with that side of the X2 part for Villa. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw in Chelsea and Aston Villa. Manchester United and Everton. We have Manchester United sitting here at 1.5 on the 1x2 with Everton at 6.25. The over-under sits at about 3 odd here with the both teams to score market at about 1.77, which is a little bit higher, right? We've seen a lot of 1.6s so far, so anything above like 1.7 kind of makes me feel like the books are really pushing you to believe that only one team will be scoring in this matchup. Manchester United at home, been pretty solid this year. Everton away from home, anything but solid this year, right? With their only win in their last 5 matches coming against Ipswich. And then recently when they've played each other, we've seen a Manchester United 2-0 win, a United 3-0 win, 2-0 win, 3-1 win, and 2-1 win. So all 5 of these matches, including an FA Cup match, United have won the match. The problem I have in the Manchester United versus Everton match is, as much as I just want to back United, I know the draw is a big possibility here, especially with how Everton play and how, I mean, let's just call it for what it is. Everton do know how to shit on a game pretty well, right? Everton do know how to really sit back and destroy a match and just keep it very low scoring for the most part. As much as I can see another upset happening, not really an upset, but as much as I could see another draw happening or even an Everton crazy win, but in this one, I'm going to go with a 2-0 Manchester United win over Everton. Here we have Tottenham and Fulham. Tottenham is sitting at 1.65. Fulham is 4.5. Both these teams shocked me for different reasons. Tottenham came out with a crazy win against Manchester City, and Fulham got absolutely throttled by the Wolves in Fulham, no less. The over-under for this match sits at about 3.5. Looks like it's going to be between 3 and 3.5. I'm curious to see where that closes before the match starts. Both teams to score is very low at 1.5, which I guess is pretty expected. I think I've heard some injuries for the Spurs here in their back line, and their keeper even are all injured, so that could probably play a part in them conceding a goal. Tottenham at home have been pretty flawless outside of that Ipswich disaster. And then Fulham, like I said in the beginning of the video, has been an almost impossible team for me to just figure out. I almost just feel like I get it completely wrong or I get the correct score exactly right for Fulham these recent weeks here. Here's what I was going to do. I was just going to come out here and be like, you know, I think Tottenham win 2-1. But I think that's what the books want you to think. This is where you get into that inception in your brain. Like, I think the books want you to predict Tottenham win, right? Fulham got throttled. Tottenham destroyed City, but Tottenham are only 1.65. I think it's more likely that Tottenham do not get the win in this match than Tottenham just destroying Fulham. That's just how the Premier League works, I feel like. So for this match, thinking about that, I'm going to go with a Tottenham-Fulham 1-1 draw. Liverpool versus Manchester City. We see Liverpool at 2.2, Manchester City at 3.2, and the draw at 3.4. Just on the first glance of the lines, it all seems pretty fair play. I know some people might think, oh, you're getting Liverpool at 2.2 odds. It's still City. No matter how bad City is, you have to imagine that, you know, I mean, they're going to get back to work, right? This is the first time they're sliding like this, so you can only imagine what they're thinking about leading into this match. That's extremely, extremely important to them. The total of this match sits at about 3, which is expected. I feel like anything more than 3 goals would just be a crazy match. I feel like this is going to be more of a low-scoring game. Both teams to score sitting at 1.5 in this match. So Liverpool at home, I mean, it looks great. Manchester City away, and we know it for a fact it doesn't look great. With their 2 losses in the Prem being against Bournemouth and Brighton. We think about the recent head-to-heads here, and we see 2 draws of 1-1. We see the City has beaten them 4-1, City has won 3-2, and Liverpool has won 1-0. As much as I do believe Liverpool are better, Liverpool are in form, Liverpool should get the win, for this match, I'm going to go with a Liverpool-Manchester City 1-1 draw. All right, boys, that wraps up the predictions for match week 13. If you guys haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I will see you guys on the next one.